Whoa, it got big.
We are live.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this February 3rd meeting of the Joint City-County Planning Committee here in Durham. My name is Charlie Reese. I'm a member of the Durham City Council, and I am privileged to serve for the next 5 minutes or so as chair of Joint City-County Planning Committee. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Ms. Cole, if you'll take the roll, that would be great.
Councilmember Reese.
I'm here.
Commissioner Jacobs.
Here.
Councilmember Caballero.
Here.
Councilmember Middleton.
I'm here.
Commissioner Howerton.
Here.
Planning Commissioner Busby. Member Busby.
Here.
Did I miss someone?
Commissioner Burns.
Did you say Commissioner Burns?
She's on the committee. I don't know if she's here yet or not.
Is she replacing Raquel?
Yes.
Okay, I had not received that information.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Ms. Cole. I appreciate that. I was very eager to welcome Commissioner Burns, but I suppose if she does get in the call, we'll do that then. Otherwise, I'll leave that to the next chair. Are there any adjustments to the agenda from staff?
Good morning, everyone. There are no adjustments from staff today, and I'm working behind the scenes to make sure that Commissioner Burns gets an invite, just to make sure there's no mishap there.
Thank you, Ms. Young. I appreciate that. Any announcements for us this morning? All right, seeing none, I'll move on to the next agenda item, which is election of officers. As I may have mentioned, this is my last meeting as chair of Joint City-County Planning Committee. It's been incredibly rewarding, especially as our last year of service together with former Commissioner Ellen Reckow, and been proud to lead this group as we work through some of the thorniest issues in local government with the best planning staff I can imagine. So I just want to thank everyone for the opportunity to serve in this role and look forward to continuing to serve with you as a member of Joint City-County Planning. But in that vein, when last we met, we combed the records and determined that given the natural rotation that we do here on Joint City-County Planning, as I'm a member of the City Council, the next chair should be a member of the County Commission, and the next vice chair should be a member of the City Council. And as we discussed last time, I would accept a motion at this time that Wendy Jacobs of the Durham County Commission be the next chair of Joint City-County Planning, and my colleague, Mark Anthony Middleton from the Durham City Council, be the next vice chair of Joint City-County Planning.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. I've had a motion and a second. Ms. Cole, will you call the vote, please?
Sure. Councilmember Reese.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Jacobs.
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero.
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Howerton.
Aye.
Planning Commissioner Member Busby.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you, Ms. Cole. Commissioner Jacobs, now Chair Jacobs, the gavel is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Councilmember Reese, and I want to thank you for doing such a great job of leading this joint committee. And I hope to follow in your footsteps. I will try my best. And I also am excited to welcome Councilmember Mark Anthony Middleton as vice chair. And I look forward to the two of us working together in leadership of this committee. And I'm really excited to get to work. As Councilmember Reese said, we have an awesome staff, and this is an exciting time for Joint City-County Planning as we work on the update of our comprehensive land use plan. So we will start off with approval of the minutes from December 2nd, 2020. And what is the pleasure of the committee?
Move approval.
Second.
Going on?
Couldn't find my mute button.
What's going on with everybody?
Thank you, Commissioner Howard. Funny
All a little
chat.
punchy this morning. I don't know why.
What's going on?
Sorry, who made that second?
So moved by Commissioner Howard and seconded by Brian Busby, so Planning Commissioner Busby. So can we do a roll vote, please?
Councilmember Reese,
Aye.
Commissioner Jacobs,
Yes.
Councilmember Caballero,
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Commissioner Howerton,
Aye.
Planning Commissioner Member Busby.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Next, we have city and county managers' priority items.
Nothing from the county.
Is Patrick with us?
I think it's Don.
Oh, Don, I'm sorry.
Sorry, nothing from the city.
Yes, sorry about that, Don. Okay, thank you very much. We have a number of reports this morning from our fantastic boards and commissions, and we'll start with a report from the Board of Adjustment, 2020 annual report, and we have Jessica Dockery with us to provide that report. Welcome, Jessica.
Good morning. Actually, we are going to have our chair, Jacob Rogers, do that presentation. And he is
Okay,
on the
great.
call.
Okay, thank you, Jacob. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having me. I'll go through this rather quickly and take any questions that you all may have. 2020 was quite a weird year, but we heard and disposed of around 45 cases, which is about a 20% decrease from 2019. And if you all remember, this time last year, I remember presenting for the 2019 caseload, we had about between a 40 and 50% increase, and we were expecting that in 2020. Going in January and February, our caseload was strong. I think our February meeting of last year was an 8 or 9 hour meeting. It was a long day. But we did not have any meetings in March or April. We didn't have any public hearings in May, so really created a backlog. I do know we had 2 meetings in June, and then we ended up having 2 meetings in December just to try to catch up. But we still had quite a decrease there. We distributed them as follows. As you can see on the report, about 20 minor special use permits were approved, 23 variance requests were approved. 1 variance request was withdrawn after continuation at the hearing, and then 1 administrative appeal, which was continued until a time when the board can meet again, which is something that I know you all have heard me talk about, or at least read something about the legislative priority of changing that. If someone opposes the remote meeting platform, it is continued to a time when we can meet again. No one knows when we can meet again right now, and I think that's going to create a greater challenge of some of these cases for the community as well. We have great attendance at the BOA. We have a really good board, a range and expertise and lots of land use policy experience, lots of planning experience, community experience. It's actually we've got a great board who always show up. We always have alternates who are available just in case someone has to either recuse themselves or is not able to attend. So as you can see, about board members were present for approximately 85% of the board meetings. That was pretty good. And I think at this point, we actually have a full board, which is great. So if there are any questions, I'll definitely take this.
Well, thank you, Jacob. And, you know, the Board of Adjustment, is one of our boards that people put in a lot of time, obviously, when you're talking about doubling up on meetings and the amount of work that you all do. So we really appreciate your service and everybody who's on the board. When you mentioned the backlog, are you caught up yet, or is there still a backlog?
Well, I think I'd have to ask Jessica about that, but
We do not have a backlog at this point. We do have outstanding cases that haven't come forward, but that's for various reasons, mostly related to site plans that are under review. But we are no longer with backlog. As Chair Rogers noted, we do have a few cases that we haven't been able to hear due to objections to the virtual hearing. So I guess you could call those a backlog, but those are more by choice of the parties rather than us not getting to them.
Okay, well, thank you. Any comments or questions from members? Well, thank you again for your great work, and hopefully we'll, in the next year, see a trend back up to where we were before.
All right, well, thank you. I'll relay this information to the board. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Next, we have the Historic Preservation Commission Annual Report, and our staff person is Carla Rosenberg. And welcome, Carla. And I'm not sure if the actual chair is here with us or not. Oh, Katie is with us. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm Grace Smith with the Planning Department. Carla was not able to be here this morning, so I'm going to try to fill her shoes. I hope I can do that and do it well. So as you can see from the annual report, things really did not slow down for Historic Preservation Commission, much like BOA last year or Planning Commission. We kept trucking along even though we had to move to a virtual meeting environment. I will not go through all of the numbers that are in the report, but as you can see, most of the COAs that we process are minor COAs approved at the staff level. The major COAs go to the Historic Preservation Commission for action, and there are definitely more minors than majors, but that's not to say that HPC was not very busy last year. Chair Hamilton is on the call, and she would like to add a few things, but I would like to say that, give you a highlight of some things to come. The staff is working on a newsletter to go out to all of the property owners that own property in the local historic districts within our jurisdiction. And that newsletter will cover a variety of things. We're also going to host some open houses virtually this spring for people to come and just talk to us like a free for all kind of, if you will, not even any particular agenda. We just want people to be able to speak with us, ask questions. We'll probably do those open houses in a few maybe a couple in the evening and maybe one or two on Saturdays, just because we know people are busy during the week working. So more details on that to come, but I wanted to put that out there, plug for things to come in the future. And Chair Hamilton is on the call, and I'll let her give her version of the report now.
Thank you,
Grace. My name's Katie Hamilton. Thanks. Thank you for having me. My name's Katie Hamilton, and actually, as of yesterday, I'm now the former chair of HPC. We have transitioned to a new chair for the 2021 year. As Grace mentioned, we did continue to see a large number of COAs. We processed 22 major COAs, and that was in large part due to city staff and their continued support and the seamless transitions we were able to have. As was mentioned in the last report, doing these quasi-judicial hearings over a digital platform is always an experience, and we are following the same process that BOA is, where if there is a individual who does not want to do a hearing digitally, we are continuing it until there is a time where we can meet in person. I did want to also mention that February is Black History Month, and one of our members, April Johnson, is the Executive Director of Preservation Durham. So I would just encourage anyone and everyone who has a chance to look at the programming Preservation Durham has in place this month to explore Durham's history and the Black history that we all know and love in our community. So with that, I thank you. And if you have any questions, please reach out and let me know.
Well, thank you, Katie, and great report. Again, appreciate all the work that you and everybody on the commission does. It's really so important to the fabric of our community. And so especially with increasing activity at the Board of Adjustment and the Planning Commission that impact things that you all do. It's all related, so thank you. Any comments or questions from committee members? Well, thank you. And the newsletter and the open house both sound great as ways to get more information out to the community and create more engagement with the work of historic preservation. So thank you for that. And next we have Planning Commission Annual Report. And Grace, I see you are the contact for that. And I'm not sure if we have the chair of the Planning Commission with us or not, but I'll let you take over. Thank you.
Good morning, Grace Smith again with the Planning Department. We do have Chair Busby on. Actually, Brian Busby is our chair this year. He rotated back on.
Oh, wow.
When we lost Chair Hyman, she was term limited, so Chair Busby rotated back in that position. He didn't have much of a break. So we Planning Commission was very busy last year. Looks like we processed even through COVID and the virtual meeting environment, we were able to hear 55 cases. You will notice in the annual report there were a couple of cases that I was not able to note the final action on because at the time I drafted the report, they had not been to City Council or Board of County Commissioners. But you may notice that they don't have final action, and that's why. But we have processed some since I drafted the report just this past month. At any rate, very busy month. A very busy year. We exceeded 2019 by 17 cases, I believe. Chair Busby will probably hit on that in his report. And I don't see this trend slowing down at all. Our case volumes are maintaining at high volumes. And we also have the comp plan obviously coming about with lots of probably more hours to be spent on that this year. Virtual meetings, public hearings, info sessions. So I see us staying very busy in 2021. And I'll turn it over to Chair Busby now.
Thanks, Grace. Most of our information's in the report. I just wanted to hit on two highlights. The first is, given that dramatic increase in caseload and then the need to switch to the remote hearing, I just wanted to thank the staff. They've been remarkable with the amount of work they've had to handle. And so Sarah, Grace, everyone with the planning department, Chris Peterson on the technical side, we were meeting twice a month through the summer into the fall. So we were meeting twice as often. Thankfully, we got through the backlog. We have another backlog coming up. So we're going to meet twice in March. But I think it's for a good reason because we're handling the increased caseload. Plus, as you all know, we're very excited about advancing the comprehensive plan, the small area plan that we're embarking on. So again, thanks to the staff and my fellow commissioners who have really been putting in the time to not only handle the caseload, which isn't going to slow down anytime soon, but also to be doing the really important proactive work and listening carefully to the community to make sure we've got really strong community engagement. So we're excited about the year ahead. Look forward to the time where we can start to be back together when it's safe to do so. But again, thanks to the staff and my fellow commissioners for all their work to keep everything moving.
Well, thank you, Brian. And it's great to have the chair of the Planning Commission on this committee too, as well. And congratulations on serving in that role. Again, we all knew that we were spending more time at meetings with COVID, but now hearing, the reports from all of these commissions really attest to that. And again, and thank you to the staff because it means extra work for all of you as well. I think these three commissions, Historic Preservation, BOA, Planning Commission, are all three boards and commissions that make decisions, make important decisions that our residents are making on our behalf. So thank you. Brian, I'm wondering from you too, Grace, or anyone, when I glanced at that workload of 55 cases, of course, most of them are coming to the city council. So that means that's the city council's workload too. And I was just, I would be interested in hearing your high level assessment about what it tells us about what's happening in Durham, because geographically I could see patterns in those cases. And I would love to hear your insights under what you think the big issues are or what's happening development wise based on what's coming to you city council members and what's coming to the planning commission.
So I'll say a few things, and then the Chair Busby and the planning director may want to echo or even add to what I have to say. Obviously, we have some fairly significant development trends in the east and southeast region of the county right now, and the city adjacent to the city. What we call the Searles area, which is the Southeast Regional Lift Station area. The city council has seen a major uptick in annexation petition requests for that area. In general, the eastern part of the county is seeing a lot of development requests, proposals. Some in the county, some already in the city, some split. We even had a petition this past Monday night. The city council heard where part of the property was in the city and part was in the county. We're just seeing a lot of growth in that area right now. Of course, we're also receiving petitions for other areas that we're staying fairly busy in all the other quadrants as well, but that is a very busy area right now. And that was the reason for the small area plan for the Searles area. That development spurred that small area plan to become something and take its own life and shape and form. So the staff's working on that now. I would love for Chair Busby and the planning director to add anything they would like to add to that.
Sure, I'll chime in if that's all right, Chair Busby. I will say that, it's funny. Well, it's not funny, but the development that we're seeing in terms of trends is really what we're kind of basing our thinking of the comp plan on in terms of things we need to address. And so generally we've, for a couple of years now, we've been saying that we see three buckets of development types. There's obviously greenfield development, which is a particular kind of pressure. It's really heavy on infrastructure and service demand. And that's what we're seeing in Southeast Durham. But we're also seeing a couple of other buckets. One is infill, and not just like tiny super urban infill, but infill that is in urban/suburban areas. We're seeing that pressure at Bragtown area. We're seeing that pressure in the quadrant kind of between 85 and Cheek Road and Gear, that kind of neck of the woods. And in a few spots. And then, we're also seeing a fair amount of interest in the third bucket, which we call kind of redevelopment. And for the most part, that's non-residential redevelopment, right? What happens when Northgate gets redeveloped? What happens when vacant shopping centers, start to turn over? It's hard to predict what might happen, but, I think the Village is one of the places that is kind of reached kind of one end of one life cycle and is potentially a place where in the future we're going to see some redevelopment. And so being able to put in policies and address that beforehand is one of the things that we're trying to do in the comp plan. So we're really basing the comp plan on dealing with the patterns that we're seeing and trying to anticipate where we think they'll go next. But I don't want to steal the thunder of the team, because I know there is a comp plan update. But I hope that framing is at least a little bit helpful.
That's great. Thank you so much. I think it really helps. I know it helps me from hearing from you all, what are these big patterns and trends that you're seeing as we go into the comp plan and thinking about the work of this committee over the next year. So thank you so much. And I just want to recognize Elaine Hyman and George Brine, who both went off the Planning Commission and were real rock stars for their contributions to the Planning Commission over a long time. So really appreciate their work. I actually served with George Brine like in 2005 on the Planning Commission. So I don't know what his total number of years were, but a really long time. So, but anyway, appreciate both of their great legacies on the Planning Commission. Thank you all so much for the report. And we are going to move on to the next. Well, before I stop, any other comments from other board committee members?
Madam Chair, I do.
Yes, Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Good to see all of you. And let me, Madam Chair, congratulate you on the assumption of the gavel and thank my friends and colleagues for allowing us to move into leadership as well. I want to thank my friend and colleague, Councilor Reese, for the amazing job he did as chair. Anybody who watches any meeting that Charlie Reese is part of, it knows it's no secret the thoroughness that he brings to any assignment that he takes on. So I want to thank him for doing a great job and for the bulwark that's already in place for this committee for us to kind of take over. They say that when a plane, the two most dangerous times are takeoff and landing for an airplane. And most of modern aviation, they fly themselves. So all you've got to do is not crash it. So this plane is at cruising altitude and all the amazing work that's been done. I'm going to try not to press any buttons and mess anything up because it's already flying high. So thank you so much, friends. Brian, I wanted to give you an opportunity to defend the honor of the Planning Commission. I live in Southeast Durham, and I see a lot of the work going on here, and my neighborhood's changing right before me. I've had some developers and others in the community say that the Planning Commission was becoming a bit activist, almost like an activist Supreme Court, that a lot of their decisions are prescriptive, where they think the city should be going, what should be happening, as opposed to sometimes adherence to what the rules on the books are. And I wanted to give an opportunity to defend the honor of the Planning Commission and speak to that and give your sense to the public as the chair, kind of the animating spirit of our Planning Commission these days. And again, I'm just channeling what's been said to me as a member of the council, but I don't believe in talking about people behind their back. So I want to give you an opportunity to address it head on.
Well, thank you for raising it. I mean, to be frank, they have not come and told us that. So it's good to hear that feedback. I would say our intent has been, as a group, number one, as Chair Jacobs mentioned, we've had a lot of institutional turnover this year, which is a loss for the community, but at the same time, it's an opportunity for new voices to come on. And we've got, as you know, half are appointed by the county commission, half are appointed by the city council. So, you know, we view our job as advisory. And so one of the things I think that we've worked hard to do is to make sure that we are providing equitable engagement opportunities. So for example, I know the case that the council heard the other night, we were brought that case originally in July, and the community was very active at our July hearing, looking for opportunities to understand the proposal, to be more active and engaged. So we actually moved that and postponed that until our September meeting, which gave the community and the proponent more time to work together. So that then came to you just the other night. So that's been a big part of our job, is to make sure that the community has the time that they need to share their thoughts and to be able to then work with the developers as appropriate. I know when we write our comments, we have to be able to say why exactly if we're voting for or against something, we're always required and encouraged to then make our points to connect directly to the UDO and the comprehensive plan. And so, you know, again, as an advisory board, we see our role as being able to point out what we're hearing from the community, what we're seeing in the proposals, tying it back to the UDO and the comp plan, and then always making sure that the community understands that we're advisory only. Up or down, we vote for it or against it, it will move to the governing body for that final decision. So we really do see our role as a partner and a sounding board, but always having to then connect it right back to the UDO and the comprehensive plan, which is why we're so excited about having an updated comprehensive plan that matches the moment that we're in. I'll say one last thing, and you know this, is that it's remarkable how many cases come forward that are zoned industrial, and we are now looking to change those to residential development. And it's just a reminder that we're operating with a comprehensive plan that is quite old. And that was when we thought Durham would have enormous amount of industrial land, and we're now seeing today the needs for residential. So we're just excited to be able to then have a new comprehensive plan. But I will say that, you know, we always, as volunteers, if anyone wants to meet with us, either a developer or a community member, I know all of us spend a lot of time in meetings. They're mostly virtual now, but we always want to be open to hear people's thoughts. So I think if, as the chair, I'm happy to help facilitate that. If there's anyone that has concerns about how the Planning Commission is operating and or wants to engage with us more deeply, we're ready to work with them and do our best job as a advisory group to the electeds.
Well, thank you so much, Chairman, and you're on record. And you said something that just struck me. You reminded me, that's right, you are volunteers, and the incredible workload that you take on and the service you do for our city is just remarkable. And so I just want to thank you and the members of the Planning Commission as well. And thank you for taking the time to address some of those things. Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.
Thank you, Council Member Middleton. And I want to acknowledge we have Commissioner Burns with us this morning. So welcome. We're glad to have you joining the Joint City County Planning Committee meeting.
Thank you.
So
Me and Netta
welcome.
switched. Me and Commissioner Lom switched. So she's on Joint City County, and I took this one. So they just sent me the email. So good morning to all.
We're glad to have you here. Yes, Councilmember Reese.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Burns, welcome to Joint City County Planning. If we had gotten you the email on time, I could have gotten to introduce you, so that's a bummer for me. But really excited to have you. I think you'll find the work in this committee very rewarding. So welcome aboard. It's great to have you with us. I just wanted to make a quick comment about the question that Councilmember Middleton raised, because it's really important. I've also heard similar remarks from folks in the community. No developer would actually say that to my face, but I have heard from folks in the community, and I will just say that I think that is a byproduct of the fact that that almost always in this iteration of the Planning Commission or in previous iterations, the Planning Commission recommends denial in situations where sometimes the City Council, regardless of that, says yes. And so it is, I think, a natural byproduct of our process that occasionally that happens. And when that does, the Planning Commission can seem to have a different set of perspectives in the City Council. And I don't think that's actually true. I think it's exactly what Chair Busby said. They are fulfilling a particular advisory role for us, and it's invaluable. I don't think there's a member on the City Council, or for that matter, the County Commission, when y'all hear these cases, who hasn't relied heavily on the Planning Commission's very deliberate and detailed work, especially the written comments. Although sometimes I actually go back and watch Planning Commission hearings, because I feel like occasionally there are situations where the written comments are a little bit thin, or I can't really get to what the point was until I can actually go back and listen. And that's so helpful to us. Whether I agree with the ultimate decision of the Planning Commission or not, having this group of volunteers from a broad variety of perspectives in our community, city and county, kicking around these issues is so helpful to me as a member of the board, of the governing board. And so, Brian, I just want to thank you and hope you'll pass along my thanks to your fellow commissioners, because I couldn't do the job nearly as well without the incredible amount of work. And the example you gave, Brian, about the Fawcett Avenue annexation and rezoning we heard Monday night is a prime example of when the Planning Commission really gave that community an extra opportunity to push, to prod the developer, to have their concerns aired in a public forum. And it was just super helpful to them and to us as we wrestled with it. And that was a situation where we came to the same conclusion the Planning Commission did, by the same margin. And so I felt like that was a great example of the kind of the partnership we have. So I just wanted to also rise to the defense of the Planning Commission. Like I said, occasionally we'll disagree, but that doesn't mean that we're not all trying to get to the same place. And so I just wanted to say that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Reese. Any other comments from committee members? Councilmember Javier.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Just real quickly, as we've seen a lot of the turnover and churn on Planning Commission on the city side as well, and we have, I think, now voted in all new members. And I just want to note that I think that there has been a lot more diversity than historically on that board, and that's something that I know that on city council side we have worked really diligently over the last few years to ensure that our boards and commissions really represent what Durham residents look like and their perspectives. And so as planning commissioners roll off in the future, it's just something that I am encouraging on both sides, both council and commission, to think about the different types of Durham residents that are out there who want to serve. And I am encouraged to see the folks who have been applying, and I'm glad that that has shifted.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. This has been a good discussion. Planning Commission, especially, as you noted, Councilmember Reese, we really depend on, we don't have many cases that come to the County Commission anymore because all of the annexations go directly to the City Council. But, we know that we have, as elected officials, many issues that are on our agendas. And the beauty and the value of the Planning Commission is this is all they do. And so they can really dig in and spend their time, and they become the experts on them. And I say that as a former planning commissioner, that we just can't get into we know that us as elected officials, we don't have the ability to really get into the issues the way the planning commissioners do. So again, I want to recognize their contributions, and this was a good conversation. And I think in the context of what Sarah Young was talking about, and Grace, and about some of the conflicts that we have coming before us, obviously the Planning Commission work and the work that really comes to you all City Council members will continue to be challenging. So thank you, because you're the ones who have to make those final decisions. So thank you as well. Okay, so we're going to move on to the comprehensive plan update, and we have Lisa Miller and Kayla Seibel with us. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Bear with me just a minute. Okay. All right, good morning, folks. I'm Lisa Miller with the Durham Planning Department. As with all of our updates to you all each time you meet, preparing the memo and the presentation were a team effort, but this morning my teammate Kayla Seibel and I will be talking through the slides, and Brooke is going to be helping us go through the PowerPoint. And at the end, we'll all be available for answering questions and responding to any concerns that come up. Next slide. So before we get into the presentation, I want to start by introducing Ami Mejia, who started with us in late December as our new Engaged Durham program assistant. We're super excited, and we now have two folks in these roles, Ami and Laquita McDonald. Ami is going to have a specific focus on helping us engage Hispanic and Latino residents in Durham. And before we move on, I want to let Ami introduce herself just a bit more.
Buenos dias, y'all. It's so good to see some familiar faces. Mark Anthony Middleton. I've seen him at the Pulguita. Obviously, Javallera has also been working with us on that effort. We had our first Latinx focus group last night, actually, and we have a lot of excitement from folks. A lot of surprise to see the city being as intentional as they are, and Carl was on the call, and they congratulated Carl for hiring me because it's the exact kind of intentional, familiar faces, and also giving an opportunity to a younger person, exactly the kind of actions they want to see from the city. So thank you so much for making this all happen. Folks are even more excited to see these goals implemented. Thanks, y'all.
Awesome. Thank you, Ami. We're super excited to have you working with us. So this slide just shows the things that we're going to highlight from the memo today. As always, we're happy to answer questions on anything related to the project. Some of the engagement updates we're going to go through relatively quickly so we can focus our time on a bit more detail on kind of the overall content and strategy for the goals and objectives as they move forward to your respective bodies for adoption, and some of the work that we were getting started on the Southeast Durham focus area, formerly called the SERLS or Southeast Regional Lift Station. Next slide. So just a couple of reminders of things we discussed last time. We had been doing some focus groups in order to try and hear from residents that we had not heard from through the listening and learning engagement. We had scheduled shortly after your last meeting on December 10th, a session with rural residents. We really appreciate the help in spreading the word. I know we had at least one last minute addition thanks to a connection from Commissioner Jacobs. In that session, we heard a lot of resident concerns and hopes for Durham's future, and some good ideas about how we can better engage rural residents. At your December meeting, we also walked through in some detail the qualitative data analysis process that led to our draft objectives that Erin Parrish from the Office of Performance and Innovation led our team through. We also continue to mention our ongoing partnership with the outreach team and their sessions to review draft objectives before they've been publicized. They are going to be looking at kind of the introduction to the goals and objectives, as well as the proposal for Southeast Durham focus area engagement at their meeting this month. And we also shared updates on all of the different methods as we're working towards engagement. At that time was focused heavily on coordinating with the transit plan engagement and getting Social Pinpoint up and running, which was published back on December 23rd. So the team will be beginning engagement around possible scenarios. The transit team will be beginning engagement again later this month for the possible scenarios on the transit plan, just as a hot tip. Next slide. So just always like to remind you all why we're here today. We are coming to you every time you meet, not just to provide updates, but also to make sure that you all are comfortable with the direction the work is headed, kind of a right track, wrong track check, and make sure that what we're doing is in line with your perspectives and recommendations. And this morning we'll be asking for some specific feedback later on. So we now have drafted 33 different objectives reflecting the needs and priorities we heard from residents through our engagement so far. While completing initial drafts of all the objectives, we spent some time trying to make more transparent the objective drafting process for the community. Building on the description that we provided to you all of the process in December, two of our teammates put together a graphic novel style description of the process. The screen shows a snippet of that there. And that has been shared through our website, a news post, and through Social Pinpoint, trying to kind of make more transparent the work that we're doing and how we got to the point where we did with the draft objectives. Next slide. In addition, we've spent some time kind of working on the remaining aspects of the goals and objectives that we'll be asking you all to adopt in full. This slide lays out a rough outline of what we anticipate the final goals and objectives document to look like. Working drafts of everything besides the objectives that had been shared previously were shared with you all yesterday. It begins by introducing what's a comprehensive plan, making sure folks have that context. Then includes a guiding value statement, which is a commitment to overarching values that came through repeatedly in resident input and is reflected in the objectives as drafted. Then a quick introduction to the goals and objectives before leading to the big picture goal statements, which are based on groupings of the draft objectives. So we're sharing those working drafts with you all today because we wanted to make sure that you saw these before they come to you in final form. We will be getting input on these from both the outreach team next week, and then from the folks who've been acting as engagement ambassadors, both last fall and the last month or so, in the next 2 weeks, since these groups have spent a lot of time reviewing and or engaging residents on the draft objectives. So another important conversation that we've been having internally with other department staff, as well as with residents, is around the breadth of topics and interconnected themes that are covered by the draft objectives. The drafts reflect what we heard from residents that were important needs and priorities. We want to make sure both that we're reflecting back what we heard to the community and also that we're raising awareness within our city and county organizations of those resident concerns. As it relates to the comprehensive plan, we also know that some of the areas of concern don't have as strong of connections to land use. So many of the objectives cover topics that are explicitly about land use and are typically found in comprehensive plans. Things like things that the planning department can more directly influence, like development regulations, zoning, and environmental protections. But for other objectives, that land use connection is not as clear, and it may not be immediately obvious how a land use plan could influence some elements of the topics discussed. Some of the examples of that include funding for school programs and operations, job training programs and partnerships, or youth and senior programs and resources. So it's important for residents, for staff, for our planning commission and elected officials to have a shared understanding of what the comprehensive plan can impact and how these objectives will be applied. So we've been working on a strategy to balance those things, reflecting back and raising awareness of what we heard from residents, as well as right-sizing expectations and understanding the role of the goals and objectives within the comprehensive plan. So to show you what we're talking about, the following 3 slides will show all 33 draft objectives, which we've color-coded based on the strength of their land use connection. Those objectives that are not highlighted have the strongest connection. Those that are highlighted in yellow have a moderate land use connection, and those highlighted in red have weak land use connections. The strategy that we propose is that for those highlighted in yellow, while we know that working towards all of the objectives will require partnerships with other departments and agencies, it's particularly important for those with this highlight. We anticipate partnering with departments and agencies in developing policies to support these objectives together that can both be in the comprehensive plan and in their plans and programs. For the red highlighted objectives, we plan to meet with our partner agencies during the next month to discuss the relevant goals and objectives to their work, get their feedback and gauge their buy-in to those objectives. For those, our work is to continue to identify partners to bring into the work of implementing this vision that's coming from the community. So for example, participatory budgeting, the strategic plan update, coordination with different city and county departments, with Durham Public Schools, and with community organizations and institutions will all have an important role in making those objectives a reality and responding to the resident input that formed them. So if we have buy-in to this proposed approach, both from our elected officials, from you all, and from our partner agencies, then the red highlighted objectives would go into the comprehensive plan. But instead of land use policies coming from those objectives, we would essentially have cross-references first to the department or agency responsible, and then later to how that group is addressing the objective. If we don't have that buy-in from you all and from our partners, then we wouldn't include these objectives as separate objectives within the comprehensive plan. But instead, we would work to make revisions to the existing objectives so that there are clear land use ties, but the priorities from these red highlighted objectives are still reflected in those in the objectives that go into the comprehensive plan. And the policies that are developed through the comprehensive plan would be only expressly addressing the land use portions of those, but the priorities would still be reflected. So just running through the next 3 slides, I know that was a lot of information. So just a couple of examples. So integrated housing is an example of one where certainly the possibilities of partnership with community development or the Durham Housing Authority would be important for the jobs associated objectives, not just with our Office of Economic and Workforce Development, but with our institutions and universities within Durham. Next slide. There are a whole bunch of aspects of transportation where that coordination with our transportation department, with the city and with the county, with the Metropolitan Planning Organization, with Go Triangle are all super important to making those systems work together. Next slide. And here we've got a couple of the red highlighted objectives. These are primarily addressing things around Durham, the Department of Parks and Recreation kind of programming and activities, as well as some aspects of Durham Public Schools operations that are less about kind of where schools are placed and more about how the schools are functioning. So those are the ones that we've identified where there is this need to work with these two partners in order to make sure that we're on the same page and figure out how we can highlight these objectives in line with the desires of those two agencies. So after the presentation, we'd like to hear from you all on two main questions arising from all of this information. The first is, are you comfortable with the approach we've proposed? If you have questions about it, we're happy to clarify. And the second, if we do have that buy-in from our partner agencies around commitment to the objectives that are highlighted in red, are you comfortable with adopting them as part of the objectives within the comprehensive plan, or are you not? So with that, we will move on to just a couple of engagement updates. So we've been working with a number of groups around small group engagement, essentially opportunities to have more in-depth discussion around a few of the drafted objectives to get more in-depth feedback on how to revise and reflect resident perspectives. Our colleagues in Neighborhood Improvement Services have been really helpful in making connections with several of these groups and have provided staff support for the Spanish sessions as well. So huge thanks to them. We have had discussions with 3 groups so far. Ami reflected some back from the Hispanic and Latino resident focus group that happened last night. We also had a session with the Fayetteville Street Fellows. One piece of feedback from them was a desire for us to be really specific with the language that we use in these objectives, to say what we mean clearly so that accountability is an option and a catalyst for the change that they're really hoping to see in the community. And we also had a small group discussion with North Durham rural residents again. They highlighted the challenges, particularly during the pandemic, of not having workable high-speed internet in many parts of the county, the impacts that that's had on schooling for their children, and also emphasized a desire to keep North Durham rural in character and maintain or increase farming possibilities in the county. Just wanted to give you all some highlights from those conversations so far. They've been really rich. In addition to these groups, we've reached out to 5 additional groups and are scheduling those discussions over the next month. Next slide. So as we've shared with you all in the past, we worked with the transit team to have engagement ambassadors over the fall or late fall, early winter in November and December. Those sessions closed shortly after your December meeting, so just wanted to share a few highlights of that work. This slide shows the high-level race ethnicity demographics for the residents that engagement ambassadors worked with. As with the first round of engagement ambassador sessions, the demographics of this group are really different from those that engaged through the online survey. Next slide. Here we just wanted to share out a quick graph of the engagement ambassador, or the responses through engagement ambassador sessions to one question for each of the objectives that they looked at. The question was, does this objective feel true for you and your community? Their response options ranged from strongly disagree to strongly agree. The chart shows that overall we had a lot of confirmation that these objectives feel true for folks. We also have open-ended feedback on ways to improve the objectives that we'll be going through with all of the other input during the month of March to see how we can revise the objectives to better reflect resident perspectives. So we'll have a lot more to share later, but just wanted to give you this preview for now. Next slide. So we've contracted with Ideal Ortiz, who is a part of the transit plan team as a sub-consultant and had been managing the engagement ambassadors work. So we set up a separate contract for her to continue that same structure with engagement ambassadors for engagement around the remaining comprehensive plan objectives. IDEAL has shared a number of lessons learned so far and has seen how ambassadors are building on the strategies that they learned in the fall sessions to reach more folks in this round. So we have approximately 200 responses for this round in a little less than a month, which is more than the overall responses from the last round. IDEAL has also been able to help us build up some predictability and continuity with engagement ambassador opportunities. So as we close with the sessions around the draft objectives, the transit plan engagement opportunities and work with engagement ambassadors will be kicking off again. So with that, I will hand it over to Kayla.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kayla Seibel. I'll be wrapping up this presentation and open it up for your feedback. So just have a few slides left. So for this phase of engagement, I think as we mentioned in previous meetings, we're using an online engagement platform called Social Pinpoint as our broad engagement opportunity to supplement our work with engagement ambassadors, the outreach team, and the small groups that Lisa just covered. We launched the site in late December and have shared it out widely with contacts through the city and county and organizations that the outreach team helped us identify. All of this amounted to over 100 community organizations that we've shared this with. As we work with the outreach team to finish the remaining objectives, we have the full list of 33 objectives. And we highlighted this in a news post that was sent out in mid-January. So the site is open until February 19th. So please help us share this opportunity with your networks. That'll greatly help us get more participation on the online engagement platform. Next slide. So just to mention very briefly, there are a few things residents can do when they reach Social Pinpoint. They can learn about the process. This takes residents to our engagedurham.com, our main project website, where they can learn about how we understood and worked with resident input to draft the goals and objectives. So there's also PDF downloads of each objective, all 33, for folks who want to read and see it in that form. And another thing residents can do on the site is review the draft objectives. So we've broken down the objectives into topic areas for residents to read and give feedback through the survey tool on the site. And last, we've designed a creative opportunity. It doesn't require working through all the objectives, but asks a fun prompt that's in line with what we're asking folks about the comp plan. We want to collect community artifacts such as photos, drawings, and quotes here. So we're prompting users to imagine the Durham of their dreams using their 5 senses on a tool called the Ideas Wall. There's categories for each of the 5 senses, and residents can choose and submit an idea, as well as join in a discussion with other residents on their submissions. So it's like a forum, and they can make comments if they want. So that's an overview of what's on Social Pinpoint right now for goals and objectives. For the next slide, jumping to what's next, as we're wrapping up this phase of goals and objectives, we wanted to provide you all with a brief update on the Southeast Durham focus area of the comprehensive plan. This is the area where there's a project to go in for the Southeast Durham Regional Lift Station. We mentioned this earlier in the meeting. So this focus area, it's the first land use component of the comprehensive plan. For those unfamiliar with this part of Durham, it's in the southeastern part of Durham. It's bounded by Sharon Road to the west, Highway 98 to the north, Carpenter Pond Road and the county line to the east, and US Highway 70 to the south. So there have been and continue to be many requests before Planning Commission and City Council to change the zoning of property in this area, as well as annexations. So this is an opportunity for us to pilot how we get from goals and objectives to land use and policies. So as we look closer into this area and engage with residents, we wanted to understand which objectives are most important here. So we're developing the engagement strategy right now. We're going to use the mapping tool on Social Pinpoint so residents can help us understand where land uses are most appropriate, what they would like to see there. And we're going to host 2 focus groups, one in English, one in Spanish, over the next month to identify what the residents' needs are, what they want to see here. And we'll be seeking adoption of this component in late summer, so after the goals and objectives. For the next slide, just a reminder, this is what we say every meeting. We continue to face uncertainties and challenges because of COVID-19. During this time, things tend to take longer than anticipated, especially as we're trying to better coordinate engagement across different projects. We've been updating the schedules in your memo each time we provide an update to reflect this. Next slide. So just some upcoming work. Our focus over the next month will be finishing up engaging residents on this work for the goals and objectives through engagement ambassadors, focused small group outreach, and online engagement. We'll then spend the month of March working through all the data that we receive, that we have been receiving, through additional data analysis work to bring this input into a revised list of objectives. Then we'll bring this to Planning Commission, Board of County Commissioners, and City Council for adoption. We'll also be beginning to engage residents in the Southeast Durham focus area, as I mentioned. Next slide. So I know this is a lot of information. With that, we'd like to hear reflections, concerns, and questions you have from the presentation of the memo to make sure we're continuing on the right track. We're excited to have the draft guiding values and goals statements that we shared with you yesterday or the day before. And we'd love to hear any questions or concerns or reflections you have on that work as well. And we have a couple of specific questions for you about our proposal that Lisa went through for how we identify and address those objectives that are important resident needs, but can't be impacted by the comprehensive plan alone or much at all. So what questions or feedback do you have about this approach for including objectives with moderate or weak land use connections? And are you comfortable adopting all of this as the goals and objectives as part of the comprehensive plan? So that concludes our presentation. Lisa and I are here along with the rest of our team to answer any questions and hear your feedback. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lisa and Kayla, and also welcome to Ami. Great to have you as a part of the team. And as always, really appreciate the depth and the intentionality of the work that all the staff is engaged with, including the folks that you brought in as contractors. Just want to open it up to committee members for questions and comments. Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you. I really appreciated this presentation, and I deeply admire the work you all are doing. I think it's fantastic that we're engaging residents in such a meaningful way. I do have a couple of kind of questions and kind of reflections. How much are we using this also as an opportunity to educate folks? Because what I am seeing, and this is based on the zoning case we had on Monday night, was really challenging for me as an individual council member. We were deep in the weeds on transit questions, and our city staff did an amazing job explaining the technicality using a bunch of acronyms that no one understands probably as a resident, just listening in, discussing things at the MPO level, all of these places that most residents don't even know exist. So for me, it's really a challenge. I know what we hear pretty consistently, what residents want as well. One of the things we heard real loud and clear at that zoning case on Monday night is that they wanted really great infrastructure, bike lanes, connectivity, sidewalks. It's a state road. We would be lying to our residents saying that the state is going to provide any relief there for the next decade at best. So how are we going to really listen to residents and their desires, and then also really practically implement what we actually have control here, what we as local, both county commission and city council have within the context of the state and the federal government?
Can share a little bit about kind of responding to the initial question about using the engagement as an opportunity for education, and then if others want to jump in and reflect as well. It's something that we've been really focused on, trying to right size how much information folks can take in at once. one of the things that we sometimes say about our profession as planners is that it seems like we go to school to learn how to take our everyday experience and making it obtuse to regular people. So we've been trying to really unlearn the way that we talk about, and even in large part the way that we think about our work, being focused on people first, which is something that's really clearly not the case in our last comprehensive plan. So we've been trying to, one of the things that you'll see in the attachment that was sent yesterday is a description of, what the comprehensive plan is. That's something we've been trying to get better at, being able to relatively quickly explain what is it in a way that we don't get bogged down in the details, but we're being true to what the opportunity for impact is. And we definitely see, as we start moving into looking at specific geographic areas, as we've been working on developing the engagement strategy for the Southeast Durham area, how do we talk about, what land use is, what's land use planning, and what are the kinds of opportunities that the plan has to influence what happens in that place?
Can I say something just as a follow-up real quick? When we're thinking about that, I think it's a great example because it is smaller, right? It's not kind of overwhelming as the comp plan. And so what we've learned through the pandemic, so there has been some positives. As much as people have digital gaps, it's also in some ways a lot easier to reach people. People don't have to drive anywhere. They don't have to leave. They don't have to find childcare necessarily. They can cook their dinner and still participate. The city of Durham has invested recently tech infrastructure that they are now testing to be able to stream meetings in up to 3 languages. And so I think about that possibility, and we are learning a lot through the pandemic around communication in multilingual communication. How do we really get information into communities that have a lot of barriers? And so I hope you all reach out to me because it's something that there's an immigrant and refugee task roundtable that is associated with the Recovery and Renewal Task Force, and happy to brainstorm with you all about how do we use the lessons we're learning around COVID and the infrastructure that the city's already purchased to really reach out to more communities.
That's fantastic. Sarah actually just shared with us pre-information about the session you'll have coming up so that we could keep that in mind. We'll definitely follow up.
Thank you, Councilmember Caballero. I think that's a great point about the conundrum about wanting to get people's input, but then the education piece and, a lot of frustrations that people have about things. Some of the things we don't have control over, whether it's because we live in a capitalist society and the marketplace, the power of the market versus, whatever rules the state legislature has, and the fact that we don't have local authority over a lot of land use decisions. So, yeah, I think that's a good point. Thank you for raising that. Any other question, Commissioner Burns?
I had a really quick one, and I do echo the sentiments of Councilwoman Caballero, if for no other reason. Having fact sheet knowledge of an issue will also stop a misinformation campaign, which is, I think, something that Durham suffers with a lot. Some of the emails, I would believe I had, 3 heads if I read all the emails that went out. But my question, my comment has to do with the fact that I'm happy to see this tool about ambassadorship continually be used here. Yesterday, the County Commission was updated on the transit plan, and we saw the survey that went out. When you saw the folks who answered, it was a stark contrast to the individuals who were able to answer the survey via boots on the ground, knocking on the door. And again, I think these were the transit authorities' words. The transit updates words, not mine. She says when it came to the survey, the majority of the individuals, and I think it was 70 or either 71%, were individuals who were wealthy and white. Again, nothing against anybody who's wealthy and white, but we all know that that is not ridership. And then via the ambassador program, what we saw was about 50% African American, about 38% maybe Latinx. And then we also saw like those socioeconomic levels were a little bit different, and it was more representative of ridership. So those are things that I can appreciate. And I also want to throw this out. As we're working on these surveys, there are certain surveys that people might A, not receive, and B, if they do receive them, they don't want to fill them out because they don't trust the medium in which they receive them from. So as these things come out, I would, as new commissioners, as new councilman, Commissioner Lam isn't here, but I think she would echo my sentiments in saying, make sure that you make a very active push to us, because there are a lot of surveys that I've actually only seen for the first time since becoming a member of county commission. And I actually like to think of myself as a pretty active individual in Durham. And so I'm thinking, if I haven't seen these, and then the listservs, the very active listservs that I'm on, if they haven't seen them, there might be some representation that we're missing. So please continue to use us. So that's what I wanted to throw out to you all. And also just keep up the good work. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Burns. Other comments, feedback? Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to friends and colleagues for all of the wonderful feedback thus far. Let me commend Lisa and Kayla on this incredible piece of work. It takes into account mistakes we've made in the past. It's aspirational. It's far-reaching. It's comprehensive. I'm particularly pleased to see the attention to Southeast Durham. Obviously biased. I'm sitting in a house right now here in Southeast Durham, and a large swath of Ward 2 is in, of course, Southeast Durham. So you know, let me just be transparent about my personal bias. I did take a note, couple of notes. I wanted to ask one question. In one of the slides, I think it was about small group participation. One of your bullets was incentives to participation. Could you talk a little bit about what the incentives are or were?
Sure. So what we did for the small groups is anyone that participated was offered a $20 gift card to one of 3 Black-owned businesses or to Food Lion. And so as people, we basically just set up a survey. We verify that they participated. We send them the gift card through email and with a thank you and tie to more information. So
how many, roughly, if you recall, if you don't remember, it's okay. How many were distributed? Do you?
So we actually have not had a ton of responses. We've done a lot of follow-up with folks, encouraging them to just, it's a 2-question survey. You put in your email address and select a gift card. So we've only issued 1 card so far, but we've had 3 groups. Some folks may be opting out of the incentive, but we're continuing to push that. One of the groups was just last night, so we may get some in from that group.
Okay, and the incentives are available to everyone.
Everyone that
participates if they want. Okay, and based upon your response, now this question is probably moot, but there wasn't. I'll ask it anyway. There wasn't any observable spike, or did it make a difference? You think in participation, or is it making a difference?
That's a good question. I mean, I think for us, we know that this is something, when we started the work with engagement ambassadors, it was coming out of the development of the Equitable Engagement Blueprint and just recognizing how much we're asking residents for their time and their expertise in order to do our work better and not compensating them for that. And so, the engagement ambassadors was stipends for engaging other folks, but this is the first time where we've done something directly incentivizing participation in these group discussions. So I'm sure that we'll learn from this process how to do it better, how to share that information better, and how to make sure that kind of from offer to actually receiving the card is taken up by as many folks as possible. But I know it's something that folks are asking about, like, is this an opportunity where there's an incentive or some sort of compensation?
That's helpful. Thank you so much. I was a little intrigued by the some of the feedback, particularly residents in the northern part of Durham, and the well, let me just say it this way. I think it's going to be important as we move forward with the comprehensive plan to be honest about what we can actually codify and what's aspirational. That it doesn't just become a wish list on the part of residents, and the impression is created that your wishes are our command. For example, the comment about keeping North Durham rural. We had a zoning case, I think it was off Angier not too long ago, and the mayor made a rather pointed comment. And if you were careful, you would have almost thought it was a throwaway comment, but he said that this is a city, and and it's a growing city, and that the notion that because you may live in a cloistered kind of environment now, that it's going to remain cloistered, and the impression that it's cut off, or this kind of oasis in the middle of an urban, that was the prerogative back in the day of folk who had money and influence and could kind of keep their neighborhood the way they want to, either through covenants or restricted covenants or whatever. So the notion that what your neighborhood looked like 20 years ago when you first moved in is going to remain that way. I think we have to be very honest with all of us. I used to be able to walk up to a golf course and hit, a ball. I'm still mad. I'm in my feelings about Lakeshore Golf Course disappearing, but nothing I can do about it, right? Because the neighborhood's changing, and the city's changing. Y'all pray for me. So making sure that we are clear in our comprehensive plan that what is aspirational and what we're actually codifying, not creating the impression that, as I've already said, that your wish list is kind of going to be, have the force of law behind it as we move forward. But I think the work that I see thus far, I'm really excited about the anatomy and architecture of the plan, and the incredible amount of diligence and passion you're bringing to reaching all aspects of our community, Latinx community. I'm really excited about the intentional outreach to that community and Black and Brown folks. So, but with all things, the military leaders always say that first contact with the enemy puts the plan, in total disarray. So, but I want to at least commend you on the incredible amount of work you've done, and I'm very excited about the prospect of this comprehensive plan and the way we have charted our path forward. So that's all I wanted to say, Madam Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Additional comments, feedback for Kayla and Lisa. Councilmember Friedman.
I apologize. I'm trying to cover 2 meetings at once, of course, but I couldn't miss this meeting on the heels of our meeting on Monday, and so I caught like the beginning and this tail end of the sections, and I really appreciate all the work of the boards and committees surrounding this commission or this committee, and hearing all of the. I think that there's so many people pouring into just what our city vision is, and I am grateful for all of that, but I just can't help but keep pushing us and acknowledging that there are so many areas we are still missing, and so many folks who are still missing in the conversations. And so I would be like, I can't speak for those folks in the way that they can speak for themselves. And so I just want to encourage us to just be mindful of who's not at the table in all of these conversations, and to continue to push as much as possible, even though it may seem needless. And also to continue to understand, there are folks in this community who do have a very good handle on, I think Commissioner Bugsby mentioned, losing that institutional knowledge on the Planning Commission is going to be a huge hit, because I want to say that developers have the institutional knowledge and the residents do not. And the residents come to us and they say things like traffic, they say things like safety, and they say things like, that they weren't engaged. And we have to be the ones to pick up on what that means. And oftentimes I feel like we miss that. And so as staff develops protocols and processes, I think that there should be equity in mind among making sure that youth are engaged in the process, seniors are engaged in the process, and people with disabilities who are always saying they have not heard anything about this. And so I continue to press in on making sure that our staff is mindful of that. I know they work for both the city and the county, and I just wanted to make sure I shared that here.
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman. Any other comments, questions? Well, I just wanted to follow up and make sure that we also give feedback on the 2 specific questions that the staff asked us about. I do want to commend everyone because this is so different than our existing comprehensive plan. And it's just, you all are just charting new ground and new territory, especially during COVID. And I'm actually amazed at the amount of engagement that you've even accomplished. And I think the ambassador model is really incredible. And the fact that you've got 36 new ambassadors just trained. So I think about the foundation that is being created in the community to keep building upon and investing in people in our community. And so I'm excited about that. And then with also the transit plan, the fact that you all have been working together with the ambassadors. So this is very rich. And when we talk about how process is just important as the outcome. And so I appreciate that you all are so focused on the process as well. My feedback about the, you asked 2 questions. One is, are we on the right track with basically the goals and objectives that we've come up with so far? I can say personally, I am. And I really, when I read through them, what jumped out at me is how integrated they all are and how connected, and how they really get at the heart of like everything that we're trying to do in city and county government, which is about people's lives and, what kind of quality of life people have, well-being, things like that are hard to like quantify. So I think they're great. And then the second question you asked was about the secondary objectives, the ones that you now are kind of saying are like moderately related to land use or not weekly, and how they should be in the plan. I personally think they should be in the plan. What I'm getting the feeling about, especially that you all are doing this Southeast area plan at the same time, it feels like this plan is going to be a living document, which feels really different than our last comp plan. Like it feels like this is something that's going to be actively implemented. And I think making sure it is connected to other plans and other agencies and trying to facilitate that is important. But I would actually argue that some of the things that you said were weakly connected may be actually not so weak, because for instance, you talked about jobs. I think that does have a really big land use component, because if we're going to create mixed use developments, live, work, play environments, then we're talking about having jobs right where people are living that they can walk to. Like that's like that part of it to me is land use related, and also encouraging more residential development where some of our biggest employers are now, like, Duke University and Duke Medical Center, RTP, Trayburn. So thinking about where are the best jobs and how do we promote more residential development that people can get to those jobs easily. So in my mind, I guess I'm seeing those things still very much land use related. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
I think what you laid out is absolutely land use connected. And that's, I think The two jobs ones are highlighted in yellow, which just means when you look at the content of the objectives, some of it is around job creation, which the city and county have less of a prominent role in kind of what kinds of jobs come to Durham. But the land use piece of where those jobs go is very much related. So this is one where we see a partnership being really important with other departments and agencies, as opposed to it being kind of more focused on just land use.
Okay. Well, thank you. And so I don't know, maybe we could do like a thumbs up or to get the consensus of the committee about the two questions. So the first one was about the current approach, the current goals and objectives that they have come up with so far. Are people on board with those in general? Any objections to those? Okay, so I think people are okay with those. And then the second question that you asked was about including the more moderate or weekly, land use related goals and objectives, still including those, and then specifically tying them to other plans or other agencies or partners, still keeping those identified in the plan. Are people okay with that? Okay. All right. So we sounds like you all are on the right track with those things.
Thank you so much for getting us good answers to those questions. We appreciate that, everyone.
Okay. And just to clarify the timeline, when is it that you are saying that the goals and objectives will be, you think, approved?
So our schedule is to have them approved this fiscal year.
Okay. And then tell us what the next step comes after the goals and objectives.
So the work in the southeast area, that focus area, is the first where we're starting to look at how do the goals and objectives play out with specific land uses on specific parcels and policies that would be born out of those goals and objectives. Looking at a particular area, talking to, engaging folks around a specific geography, as opposed to looking at the county as a whole. And we're identifying, we're working through a kind of plan for where all focus areas we look at throughout the community. There's an opportunity for us to learn from some areas that may be representative of the kinds of issues that come up in multiple other areas. So looking at land uses and policies in one area that could potentially be applicable in some similar areas. So we're trying to look at those patterns right now to identify what the additional focus areas will be. We should have a lot more information on that at your next meeting, or let's see, April. If not April, then June we'll be heavily looking at that. So.
Okay, well, thank you. And I just want to add, we all just received the annual resident satisfaction survey. And when I was reading through everything that you provided to us, I thought that, I don't know if you all have had a chance to look at it, but a lot of the things that were highlighted in that survey that residents said that they were priorities and cared about, I think would be another source of information for you all. And there was already a lot of alignment that I saw, especially around affordable housing and housing issues. So that we just got that on Monday. I don't know if the city council members have seen it yet, but that's just wanted to share that as another source for you guys to look at. So thank you so much for your great work. Really appreciate all of you. And Sarah, go ahead.
I just wanted to put in a quick plug that when we go to seek adoption of the goals and objectives, we're going to be looking at scheduling a joint meeting of both full governing bodies. So we'll be working through both administrations and both clerks' offices to do that. We did that way back in the past. I think it may predate all of you, but there have been a couple of instances where for some big planning projects like the last comp plan, it was just much easier to get both bodies in the room or in the virtual room so that discussion can happen simultaneously together. So that's what we'll be proposing as we go through the comp plan as well.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I'm going to recommend that Council Caballero be designated survivor for that meeting and not attend that session, just in case anything happens, for continuity of government. Thank you, ma'am.
I'll remember you didn't ask me to be the designated survivor.
I'm like,
You're
thanks
with
for
me,
the
buddy.
pressure there.
Our fate will be the same, Reese. You're with me.
All right, so item number 11 is the TC 21000001 Omnibus 16. And they definitely are omnibuses, like the terminology. But we have Michael Stock with us here for it.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Jacobs and other council members and commissioners. Michael Stock with the Planning Department. I'll try to be brief because the time has been running late this morning. Before you is the next round of omnibus text amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance. Just as a brief descriptor, many of you are familiar with these text amendments that come through, but those who are listening may not. And I know that Commissioner Burns, new to her role as County Commissioner, has not yet been exposed to these. And these are basically a collection of proposed text amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance that are basically seen as technical in nature or do provide some minor modification of intent of the ordinances. We get this information from the everyday work that the Planning Department does in reviewing applications, working with the ordinance. We get it from staff members, we get it from community members. We collect the list and we go through it. We vet the issues, and then we come up with it. We try to do it on an annual and even semi-annual basis, so the list that comes before you isn't monstrously long and cumbersome to review. Sometimes we're successful with that, sometimes we're not so successful, but we do our best. And so the presentation that I want to briefly go with you today is just hitting the highlights of what's in this round. We'll finalize it after we get feedback from this board and any other reviewing department and agencies. We do seek to try to get this to, I believe we're looking for the March Planning Commission, probably April at the latest. And then it would go to both governing bodies, depending upon the scheduling that's available. It unfortunately kind of hits around budget time and other major aspects that might be going to City Council and Board of Commissioners. So it would either be early summer or late summer. But this is the list of at least the highlights. And I'll go through this briefly and concisely as possible. Next slide, please. So the first hit upon is just common review procedures. We are looking to modify the requirements for pre-application conferences and neighborhood meetings, and not the ordinance currently requires them in the singular where only one is required for each. But as we are reviewing our processes for these meetings and looking to expand community engagement for a lot of these applications, we will be seeking that there may be instances where multiple meetings are going to be required, and thus we want the ordinance to reflect that possibility. So moving from the singular to the possibility of a plural, or at least that flexibility, depending upon what the application. Also, we are looking to remove for some quasi-judicial hearings, state statute does not require publishing the notice. So we are going to remove that requirement. That is a big cost savings, not only to the city and county, but also to applicants. Mailed notice will still be required, and postings on the property will also still be required. A lot of these applications are not big time developer type applications, although some of them can be, but a lot of them are everyday citizen applications, and the cost savings can actually be substantial with these applications when not requiring a published notice in a newspaper. Next, changes to approved development plans. We're seeking to codify the way development plans that have been approved over the years, and we're talking about decades going back even into the 70s, how they are interpreted, and what a proposal that might not that is coming in under a development plan, what a change would require them to do, whether it's a full change and a new rezoning that's needed, or it's just amending the plan in some way. Council just heard a case with the Forest at Duke recently, where it was just really amending the plan by adding a height provision, but it wasn't a full change in the zoning. And then also clarifying, and it doesn't change how the ordinance affects it, but just makes it more explicit how the affordable housing bonus would work with approved development plans, and basically saying that you can do it by right and you don't have to change anything about the development plan. Uses, updating some of our use categories with the adoption of the modified definition of family, increasing it to 6 non-related persons. We have 2 uses that are defined in the ordinance right now called rooming house and boarding house, and those uses have been defined, they've been translated from historical zoning ordinances. Those uses and definitions have not changed over time, and they're a little bit outdated. So the more recent and more modernized housing co-living, we wanted to reflect that, and replacing those 2 uses with the term co-living. And we do define co-living. The allowances for co-living versus rooming and boarding house don't change much, actually. The permissibilities don't change. You would still need use permits in certain situations. In other situations, you would still allow them by right. But we just wanted to kind of modernize and update the way housing is coming about these days. We also wanted to expand the allowance for shelters and food pantries. I'm sorry for that typo there, and meal centers. Currently they're under social service institutions, and they're very limited to where they can go. Thank you, pantries. Thank you. That they can go. It happens. It happens, folks. They're actually very limited into the number of places where they can go. Only like 3 or 4 zoning districts, and they all require a major special use permit. Staff has felt that these are critical social service, community service uses and institutions, and they should be reflected that way, and zoning should not necessarily get in the way of organizations and government, nonprofit organizations, or whoever wanting to provide these services. So the uses and these have been specifically called out and expanded allowances. We've also and finally clarified event venues and conference centers and retreat houses. That's not as interesting a clarification, but we've also clarified those and relocated them within the use table. Next slide. We're revising height allowances in these districts. In the RSM district, you're limited to 35 feet, but you can go unlimited amount higher with if it's specified on the development plan. And we're looking to coordinate that change with the OI and CG districts, just kind of make them all consistent, where every other place where you can seek additional height, you seek it through a use permit. So we're clarifying the RSM district to seek it through that same process, but also to limit it at 55 feet. And we're also changing OI and CG to be allowed to go to 55 feet for consistency purposes that way also. From 50 to 55, it's not much of a change. In the RC district, there's a place where you can only go up to 45 feet, where all other places, instances, you can go up to 75 feet. We're adding just the possibility to go up to 75 feet with a use permit. So we're maintaining the same strategy as other places in the ordinance to seek additional height. And then we're also clarifying the height allowances in the S2 districts of the design districts to allow for additional, when you are seeking additional height that is allowed through the provision specifically of affordable housing, you would have to do a step back. You have to step the building back. And we are offering a provision that you could either do that or do it as a change of materials. So it kind of creates an opportunity of flexibility, possibly even cost savings for that development. Next slide, please. And then finally, we are clarifying the variance request process for intrusion into stream buffers that are beyond state requirements. We are also clarifying project boundary buffers for when sites are mass graded along rights of way. And then also something that came up, and this is the final highlight I want to point out. Many cases deal with interconnectivity between new neighborhoods and existing adjacent neighborhoods, and many times planning commission members and city council members hear about the concerns raised by residents who didn't know that a road was going to connect to a neighboring property or that the road was going to be built out. We felt, maybe it's worthwhile that we let residents know that where someone buys a house or moves onto a street and they see a dead end street and they are clearly made aware that that street could in the future, it's not necessarily going to happen the next year, could be in 5 years, could be 10 years, but that road will be built out or connecting to another community, and they should be made aware of that. So we're putting that into the ordinance. We will most likely also have to update the reference guide for development too, but we wanted to put that in the ordinance also. That's it, and I apologize again for the typo. Again, my guffaw, but I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you. And I see Sarah just shaking her head.
Well,
I know. Well,
we'll believe that typo where it was.
Well, we'll blame PowerPoint for not catching it for me.
Anybody who uses the word guffaw in a public setting automatically gets a pass. So
I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for the presentation, and I really appreciate how, especially it really is very apparent in these changes that how the staff is trying to respond to what you all are seeing and people are experiencing, and trying to address concerns, I hate to say, but on the ground, or that are really impacting, people's lives and making our ordinances more user-friendly, or, impacting people's quality of life. So really appreciate it. Any comments or questions from committee members about these proposed changes? Commissioner Busby.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The great update. Really, I really appreciate this. I wanted to, in particular, call out a few things that I thought were really important. The changes on the public meeting notice and the neighborhood meetings is really, I think, a great step forward. Often the additional neighborhood meetings then lead to things coming to us at the Planning Commission that have had more time to work through. And then by the time it goes to the governing body, a lot of the issues have been resolved just through good public interaction. So that's great. The changes to the landscape and buffering section, I think, is really good as well. And then that street connection notice, I think we do hear that a lot. So I think just allowing the community to understand what could happen is important and will resolve a lot of conflicts before they even become a conflict. Michael, I had 3 questions, and I can deal with some of these offline if it's faster, since I know we're running out of time. I was interested in learning more about the thinking in section 6.5. You talked about that increase in the residential compact development intensity. So that was one. The second was understanding the changes for the encroachment into the stream buffers. That's one of the things we hear a lot at the Planning Commission. We hear about traffic first, usually, but we are hearing more and more about flooding issues and concerns about neighborhood flooding as we see more development happening throughout Durham. And then the final thing was an understanding on the thinking on the reduction on parking from a half mile to transit to a quarter mile. So those 3 things, as time allows, just interested to hear the thinking on those.
Yeah, I'll gladly try to address them concisely. With the RC district, you're generally allowed 75-foot height, but if you are at the edge of the compact neighborhood tier and it adjoins a residential area, you're limited to 45 feet and use. But the only thing that's being proposed is that there might be instances where additional height is warranted based upon what's being proposed, and just offering the ability to at least ask for that up to the maximum height of 75 feet. So it would go to the Board of Adjustment. So it's not a by right ask. The second, it's not a by right, I should say. The second, with the stream buffers, there are instances in the state statute that's also mimicked within the UDO where that section calls them uses, but they're really encroachments. The term uses can get confusing, but encroachments just are prohibited flat out. And there's variance procedures to consider those technically prohibited encroachments, and the state handles them for the buffers that they are responsible for, but there's no specific method beyond the standard variance application for the buffers that exceed state review, that the state doesn't care about, the larger extended buffers that the UDO has. The state doesn't care about those because it's not their purview, it's not their jurisdiction. So it's just clarifying that. Honestly, that provision might be delayed a little bit. We've been looking at the state rules in more detail, and there might be some other changes that we need to consider, and we might pull that out and bring you a more comprehensive riparian buffers update text amendment moving forward. But it's in it now, but you may not see it at the Planning Commission. And I hope that answered your question with that one. And the third one, could you remind me of the third one once more again?
Right, it was page 4, Article 12. I'm sorry, no, page 4, Article 10, the reduction in parking to transit.
Oh, yeah. So we're extending it from a quarter mile to a half mile. We've based all our compact neighborhood tiers off of the standard best practices that people are comfortable going to transit stops and centers from within a half mile. So we wanted to allow that reduction in parking to reflect that half mile versus a quarter mile that's currently in the ordinance.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And I do hope you pull out the buffer standard, just because there's evolving state and federal guidance, I think. So I think it is wise for us to wait and see how that all plays out first.
Yeah, and the state just recently updated its rules this summer, and there's other things that we were catching to. So again, we just had actually that conversation yesterday about that. We'll most likely pull it out to a more comprehensive.
Or Chair Howard, I haven't gotten
great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll give you a call back when you get this message, 919-599.
Thank you.
Commissioner Howerton, I believe your mic is open, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Great questions. Thank you, Brian. Any other comments or questions from committee members? Well, I just wanted to follow up and say I appreciate removing the language about rooming houses and boarding houses. I think they have connotations that I'm glad we're removing those and focusing on, I like the concept of co-housing or co-living and group living. I'm glad to see dog parks, something in there about dog parks. I'm now a grandmother of a dog that I'm hearing all about complaints about dog parks. So I'm glad that that's getting some attention. My question was about the changes related to height allowances and moving those to special use permits. Do you see any impact to people not using the affordable housing density bonus by doing that? Or just even in general, that we're using special use permits for that versus, do you see any impacts with our trying to incentivize people to use the affordable housing density bonus to get more height?
I haven't seen that, and the affordable housing bonus program has built in additional height allowances by right. So you can, I don't see a conflict at this time.
Okay, thank you. And I guess if you do, you'll let us know.
As always, we'll try to address it as best as we can if we do.
At what point do we get a report on whether that's being used or not, or how that's actually going?
I'm not aware of significant use of it yet. We've reported generally on an annual basis, not officially, but the question has always been arisen based upon the topic. How's that bonus program working? And it's still very modestly used. I believe there's still only one that's been used, and the Farrington Road development obviously went the development agreement route instead of the affordable housing bonus program route because of certain special considerations of the type of development that it was. So we may see, and crossing our fingers, with affordable housing development, maybe we'll see it take the more development agreement route than the density bonus route, or maybe it's a combination of that based upon the uniqueness of each case that might come in.
Okay, well, thank you. I guess this might be something that this committee wants to at least track on an annual basis. I know we, Councilmember Middleton and I were talking last night about, we know we're getting our regular reports about expanding housing choice. We get those, but this might be something for us to really track how we're doing on supporting more affordable housing development overall. As we know, it's such a big issue, a priority in the community. Sarah?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, we can definitely do that. I think annual is something that's very reasonable and achievable for us to track, particularly because we're not getting much usage of this. So anything more frequent, you probably wouldn't see very much. But I also want to use this opportunity just to mention that I think when we started tracking EHC, we said we agreed on quarterly, but since this body meets every other month, quarterly doesn't quite work. Because that would be every third month. And so we'd like to see if you all are willing to let us do that every other one of your meetings, so every 4 months. There's not really a whole lot of change every 2 months to document, which is why we did not come back this month with another EHC report, but we're planning to do so next time. So since you mentioned that, I wanted to throw that out there and see if you all would be amenable to doing it every 4 months.
Do we have I see one thumbs up. Any other? Okay, sounds like everybody's okay with that. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
All right, well, any other comments before we adjourn the meeting on this item? Well, thank you again to everybody. Great comments today from committee members. Appreciate everybody's input. Again, outstanding work from our staff. during COVID with all the extra work that people are doing, especially to support all of our boards and commissions. And I know we have other reports that we receive. Are those coming at our next meeting, Sarah?
Yeah, these were ready early, so we went ahead and moved these through since they're mostly kind of a number crunching exercise. The other two advisory boards, Appearance Commission and DOST, will be ready for the April meeting.
Okay, great. All right, so seeing we have no other business before us, then
Madam Chair, if I might just take
go
a
ahead.
quick point of personal privilege. I know we're at the end of the agenda, and I probably should have said this during the announcement, but just wanted to remind folks that at noon today, the city county's joint recognition of Martin Luther King, the Martin Luther King holiday, will take place on YouTube, and just wanted to invite everybody, if you're available, to look at that. A wonderful, wonderful speaker and member of our community, Corinne Haldeman, will be keynoting that event, and I think we'll all be the better for it if we take a moment and just kind of tune in if we're available. So just wanted to put that out there by way of announcement. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much for mentioning that, Councilmember Middleton. Thank you. Yes, so we will, many of us will be together soon for that great event. I'm always look forward to that city county chorus. So, but anyway, so if we have no other business before us, then I would move that we adjourn and hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.